Hey, Marion and Rich Patterson with Winding Pathways and Kelsey from Hoover's Hatchery. We're on a nice summer day in July. There's a lot of corn sweat going on here. And take a look at our run. We've shown it to you before when it was bare, and now it is just absolutely lush, and it kind of feeds into what we're talking about today, which is how to save money on feed with the chickens. So, Rich, our chickens now are about 16 weeks old or so, and
Yes.
what's going on with that?
Well, we got the chicks from Hoover's Hatchery in April, and I have kept track of the costs of raising those chicks, projected it out to age 20 weeks, which is about when they'll start laying. So I was curious, and I used the cost of the litter, the wood chips underneath, the feed, the cost of the chicks themselves, and I just took a guess at a few dollars for electricity to run the brooder.
Okay.
When I count all of that up, the price of the chicks is really small. The price of the electricity is really small. The price of the wood chips is pretty small. Most of the cost is the feed.
Right,
Okay,
and we're
so-
not counting in the structures and all the things that we already have here, but the yearly kinds of
Yeah,
things.
the consumables.
Consumables. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So-
And what did you find out?
We found out that it will cost us about $15 to raise a chick, buy the chick from Hoover's, and buy the supplies up to about when they lay eggs. So about $15
Okay.
or so, and that's not too bad. You know, you could spend a lot more on that on a dog or a cat or
Right.
something
Now,
else.
we
So-
have about a dozen chickens, and most people have 6, so what would that be? Would it be about the same ratio?
I think it still would be about $15
Okay.
a chicken, but that would be a good amount to figure if money is
Okay.
important and you're really concerned about that.
All right, and you, Rich, is always looking at how to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so what have you decided on a few different things?
Well, we're not going to reduce the cost of the chick. We have to buy them. We're not going to reduce the cost of electricity. Utility isn't going to give us a break. We probably aren't going to reduce the cost of the wood chips.
Right.
So the biggest cost is feed. So what can we do?
All right,
To
so let's
feed-
take a look.
Feed the chickens well so they're healthy, they grow, but it keeps the price down.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of stuff you can do.
All right, well, show us what we can do here.
Okay. First off is the run, which Kelsey just showed a picture. And our chickens are out during the day. We have seeded the run to plants that some of these plants the chickens really like to eat.
Go over here.
Some they don't like to eat, but all of them attract insects. And it's really fun. The one Marion's holding there is buckwheat. And chickens won't eat buckwheat, but insects love it. So the chickens will park themselves near the buckwheat, and boy, any insect that comes by
Yeah.
is very quickly converted to chicken feed.
So there's that, and then you thought this one here is a,
I think that's a radish or
Okay.
a turnip.
yep, and then we have some clover in here, I can see that.
So during the summertime, our chickens are getting almost all of their feed from this run. But we're unusual. We have a huge run. Each chicken has about 200 square feet of run to go in. And because of that, we can keep it vegetated pretty well. It's harder if you have a very small run.
Okay, and I'm gonna stop you here and take a look right over here, and you can see one of the Brahmas, is that right, with the feathers? And right in front of her is a cantaloupe skin. Tell us about that. Why on earth is there cantaloupe skin, and then behind Kelsey are some watermelon rinds? What's that about?
Well, we have talked in the past about using table scraps or human food, and many human foods are very good for chickens as long as you don't overdo it, but it's a great supplement. And chickens love the red part of the watermelon. So the other day I dressed out a watermelon and I scooped out the red part that we eat, but there was still a lot of red here on the rind. So put it in here, the chickens get just about every little bit of that.
Yeah, look at that.
And
they've
the-
eaten that.
When they're done, and look at that, there's a bee coming in.
Yep,
That's a bald-faced hornet that's coming in.
it's gonna get
to
eaten up. It's
sniff,
not
and
careful.
those chickens will turn that into feed, that hornet. But I'll take these, when the chickens are done, I'll take them with my fork and I'll put it in the composter.
Yeah, and
and
take
let
a
'em
look
rot
right
away.
over here, just beyond the fence. You can see that wooden structure. That's the composter right there. All right, so the other thing is feed itself. So
Yes.
we've got a couple of thoughts on feed. So you got the run, you got a few treats that you use judiciously, and don't we do something with our neighbors?
We do, but before, there's one thing right here. This is an active garden. There's my tomato plants and beans and all. But as soon as the garden season is open, I'm going to open the fence here and I'll let the chickens go into the garden, and they'll scratch around and they'll find a lot of weed seeds and they'll find insects there, and they'll work the soil up. So people who have a garden in the summer, if you can structure it so you can get the chickens in there, say October when all the crops are, then they'll help you. You'll have fewer weed seeds next year
Yes.
to deal with.
Take a look over there. Look at them. They're coming up. They're really interested in what's going on here. That's really cool. Look at how pretty they are. They're really getting beyond the teenage stage and not quite fully adult, but boy, are they beautiful. Yeah.
So
All right, now there's
now-
one more thing with food. The feed.
Food.
They gotta have feed.
How to reduce the cost of the feed that you have to buy.
All right, let's
Right.
go over this way and take a look.
So, you have choices, and a first choice is, do you want bare bones feed, or do you want a quality feed that has probiotics and essential oils and those things? That's what we go for, quality food. It's a little bit more expensive, but not a lot. Do you want organic feed or not? If you want organic, it's twice as expensive. We choose to not get organic feed because our chickens are out here a lot and there's no spray here, but they get a little bit of non-organic feed that we buy. Okay? Buy it in a big quantity. It's cheaper, and that's what we want to show you over here. So we'll leave Kelsey out.
And there's one thing, you guys know that we're a little bit beyond the age of 25. And right now, Rich has had cataract surgery, and for a couple of weeks, he's not supposed to bend over because there's pressure on the eyes. I've got a bum hip right now, so walking around is kind of hard, and lifting this guy would be really pretty difficult. So we've got a couple of tips for people. In the trunk, we've got a towel that we put down, because when you scoop the feed out, sometimes it's going to spill, and nobody wants to have little bits of chicken feed in here that the mice say, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. So you can pick up the towel, shake out the feed. So Rich, what are we going to do with this monster?
Well, we went to the farm store where we bought our feed, and the very nice assistant manager went over. I said, I can't pick up a 50-pounder, and he said, well, follow me, I will. And he picked it off the pile and he put it on the cart, and he followed me and I paid for it at the checker, and then we followed us out to the car and he put it in the car. And he said, any good store will do that.
Yes.
So if you can't or don't want to pick up a big bag, he suggested you go in the store, stop at the checkout, let them know, let them know what it is. And any good store will have an employee go up there and help you, and there's no charge.
Now, we're home. The manager didn't offer to come with us back home and help us on this end, so what are we going to do, Rich? We got to do something.
Here we are. My doctor would be upset if I lifted that bag of feed.
And his wife would be too.
So, most bags of feed nowadays, and sometimes they're a little bit cardboard, but you tear this strip off.
All right.
Like that, and presto, it's open.
All right.
Right? It's still heavy, so I have my spool.
Now, he still cannot bend over. Remember that one.
I'm not bending, and I'm maybe lifting 2 pounds. I'm going to handle it. Like that. I'll give it maybe 3 scoops.
All right, and then I'll get the other one.
And we'll put 3 scoops in the other.
So this is a pretty good tip for anybody who cannot lift things, is not supposed to bend over.
Or even if you are a woman with, say, 3 little kids until you go in the store, the store will help you.
Yeah.
Okay?
And then back home you can figure it out using a system like this.
So, I'm not supposed to bend over, but I can bend like this right now. Next week I can bend over. But I have maybe 6 pounds in each of these, so my doctor's happy, my wife's happy. I'm going to take them in here.
All right, just mind your step here. Which one does it go into? The empty?
And I will, this is layer feed. So I'm going to pour my layer feed in there. And it's going to take me a few trips, but I will get it in there safely without lifting 50 pounds.
Right.
Okay?
All right, now, I have 2 barrels here, and they all sort of look, they look the same to me. So how do I tell the difference between the 2, Rich?
Well,
I mean,
I
you
know
because you
and
do it.
if we have someone taking care of the chickens when we're done, I tape instructions on the type
On
of
the top.
feed, but it's usually not confusing because most of the time we're just using lay feed. But here is a dilemma. The instructions that you get from feed stores
Right.
and hatcheries, from even Hoover, say you feed the starter grower until you get the first egg, and then switch to layer. So, but it's virtually impossible to time that, so you're absolutely out of grower before you start layer.
Yeah, we've got
And-
probably a half a barrel of the grower right here, so we need to do something in several weeks.
And I don't want to waste it, so what I do early on, when I get the first egg, I start blending the feed. So I'll put in a scoop of the grower, scoop of the layer, and in a few weeks I'm all out of the grower, then I'm just using the layer. And that way you don't waste feed or money,
Right.
and it keeps the chickens, they're getting just what they need.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good system.
Good.
It's very important to store feed in a metal container with a tight lid that keeps it dry and sealed and keeps the mice out. Okay? And or anything. There are lots of animals beyond chickens like to eat chicken
That's
feed.
right.
It's too expensive to have mice eating feed. So
And
keep
that's a
away.
reason that I suggested the towel on the bottom of the car trunk, because you're going to spill some feed. Scoop up that towel, bring it in, shake it into your bin, and you should be good to go. All right, so we have 3 ways to save money on feed. What are they again?
Well, you have a good vegetated run to let them out. If you have a place where you can let them free range forage in the yard, that also works. There are some new fencing devices on the market that are temporary that can work without electrification. So
Good.
you can spread that out. If you wanted to expand your run for, let's say, this week
Right.
out into a lawn, you could easily put that out, let the chickens go out there and they can feed, and then next week move it to another spot.
Sure. All right,
And
so
that
that's
works.
one.
So buy in biggest quantity you can, okay? Decide if you want organic or not, and if not, it will be less expensive,
Right.
okay? Produce as much natural food as you can in the run. Use your table scraps and your neighbors who will get used to bringing their table scraps over, and that will supplement. And it doesn't provide a lot of their diet, but it's a nice supplement and they love it.
Yeah.
So all of those things can keep your feed price cost down.
Okay, great. So those are some things to think about with food and habitat and such. Do you have a tip of the month?
We do, okay, and this is one that I have just sort of learned because normally I bend over all the time, and right now in the interim between these different eye surgeries, I'm not supposed to bend over. Well, that causes a little problem because in the morning I have to open the pop hole to let the chickens out. In the afternoon I have to close it in the evening, and here's what we do. It's late afternoon. The chickens are out there. I want them to come in here so I can close them up for the night where the raccoons can't have them for dinner. So I've gotten a habit. I put a little bit of corn in this right over here, and I took Joanne Hoffman, our neighbors, we bought some baby marshmallows. They love them. Put just a few of them over there, and the chickens are still out there. Then I go out and I go, and they have learned that's the dinner bell, so they come go right in there, and then I can come over here.
So they're in the other coop. Now I do it a little differently. I get this door ready to be closed before I let them in.
But without bending over, I can go like that, like that, and it sometimes sticks up, but I can push that down.
So that's pretty easy.
Don't have to bend over. And if I'm 90 years old one day and I still can't ever bend over, I could do this. In the morning, It's a little bit trickier, but I can
Oh,
open it back up.
that is tricky. Oh my gosh.
And it takes a little bit more time and a little more coordination, and I can actually feel because I'm not bending over.
We are not going to show this to the doctor, but he's not bending below his heart, so that's a good thing.
There.
All right. So whether you have had cataract surgery or not, or you've got a bad back or a bad whatever, or you just need a little bit of different ways to do this, that's a pretty good tip of the month to get the animals in.
And there's one other thing. Now
All right.
that we're in the coop.
There's always one more.
This is a small water. It's 2 gallons, which would be about 16 pounds. Okay?
Right.
I'm not supposed to lift
10
16
pounds. 10
But
pounds, that's it.
what I do, I use the same buckets there. I bring the empty water in here, put it there, put a couple of quarts of water in each
Sure.
bucket, come in here, pour it in. There's 4 pounds. There's another 4 pounds. What? Do
Okay.
that 4 times, and I have this feeder filled without having to
Feeder or waterer?
order without
Okay.
having to
Sure.
bend over much or lift very much weight. I also bail the feeder,
Same
holds
way.
quite a bit of weight, and I do the same thing. I bail it in smaller quantities with my bucket. I don't, no way do I try to take this out there, fill it up, and then try
Yeah,
to get
that's
it back.
crazy stuff. Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah. And plus he gets a whole bunch of extra steps in, so it works out all the way around. All right. I think we are the Pattersons, Winding Pathways with Kelsey and Hoover's Hatchery for the day. And maybe we can look at the chickens out there one more time. What do you got? One
There
more.
is one other thing, you know.
There's always one more.
We started these chicks in April, okay? But now, late summer and into early fall is an ideal time to start chicks. And
Oh.
it's really warm. You don't need much brooder heat. Maybe just a little bit in the evening, so that's much easier than in the spring.
Perfect.
Chicks are readily available at Hoover's, many varieties in the late summer and the fall. And then by the time it starts getting cold in October, they're pretty well feathered.
Nice.
And they can stay warm. And then they start laying in the winter when it's the cookie baking time.
Yes.
Cake baking time.
And then that goes all through the winter into the spring where there are all kinds of holidays and festivals. So perfect tip.
So-
Yeah.
You don't need to wait till next spring. You can get get everything ready, put in your order to Hoover's, and get your chicks this fall, and they'll be just fine.
Excellent. HooversHatchery.com. So I think we're done, unless there's one more.
No more, one more.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.